Hi and welcome. Today I've made a art tag, and I started with a piece of Bristol smooth paper that I've cut on my Cricut into a tag, and I'm just going to start adding some distress inks. I'm using peeled paint, Oxide, and that's going to be my first layer. I'm just kind of gonna grunge it up, so don't fall in love with the green because it's not gonna be green. And then I'm adding some red, and I'm just kind of hoping that in different areas in the final you'll just see maybe a little hint of the green and a hint of the red through the colors that are going on top. When you look real close, it does, but not a lot. And that's kind of what I was going for, just a little something back there. So next up is scorched timber, and this is just a regular distress ink, as was the lumberjack plaid. So it looks kind of just like a muddy brown right now, but it'll get better. I did a little bit of Spritz and flick, and the first one wasn't enough. The second one was better, and turns out it really doesn't matter because you can't see it in the end product. So that kind of was a waste of time for me, but that's okay. Now I have this stencil that I got from, I think it was Simon Says Stamp or Stampers Anonymous, one of those two. And I kind of just like the overall look of it. So I'm taping that down so it doesn't move. And I'm going to be adding some Crackle white texture paste, and my texture paste is getting a little thick and running out. I'm gonna have to order me some new very soon. So I'm just putting it on as thin as I can. However, it is pretty thick, and so there are some spots that it does go on a little bit thicker than I normally like. Now I'm not covering the entire card because I will be adding a little bit of collage papers on the right hand side, so I don't worry about adding collage or any of the texture paste to that side. Smooth it out as best I can. It's starting to thicken up even more now that it's out in the air. And as with the texture paste, it will kind of absorb what's behind it, so it's turning brownish, which is fine because I'll be adding a lot more ink to it. And here I'm just taking a piece of scrapbook paper, and I want to layer a couple of them onto the tag when it's done. I'm not going to do it yet because that's not dry. I'm just looking for spacing to see how much I need, how much it's going to cover, because I don't want to cover much of the texture paste. So I'm breaking that piece into two pieces because I want to layer my pieces. about like that. I'm going to add some vintage photo to the edges. And I'm going to stamp on top of the larger piece. Now, the first one I do in potting soil from Archival Inks from Ranger, and it was okay. I mean, it's fine. It looks like it's supposed to look, but I think later I also stamp a black one just to see if I prefer it in black, and I do end up using the black one, which to me just stood out a little more. I just wasn't sure which one I would like, if I want it more subdued or out, and so I do end up using a black one. You'll see me make the black one, I think. Yes, I think you do. So yeah, here I've got another piece of paper, and it's where I'm going to try the black. And that is StazOn Ink. And because it StazOn Ink, it dries pretty quickly. And I decide that I want to try to add a little bit of embossing powder to it, and in black. And I don't really care if it grabs everywhere. I just really want a few spots, like especially those, I don't know what if they're cattails or what they are, the prominent portions of the stamp. I wanted them to kind of stand out in embossing glaze, and they do. It kind of spotty grabbed some of it because it does dry awfully fast, and it's regular paper, so it's going to absorb the ink pretty quick. So, but it was perfect actually. It took, in areas it took some of it, and other areas don't have it, and I kind of like that. So it might look a little dark right now, but once I get the finishing colors on top of the tag, it will look good. And as you can tell, the crackle is starting to happen on the tag, so it won't be too long before I can start finishing up the colors on the tag. Okay, so the crackles are there. It's kind of dried up now. So I'm adding some Spritz ink. I'm adding some walnut stain oxide spray, and then some blue sky. I actually can't remember which one it is. Stormy sky on top of that. I end up adding more. And then I also add a little bit of wild honey, because it was the only one I thought would go good with that. I don't have a whole lot of distress spritz, so that was kind of a neutral looking one. And so I add those, and I add them a couple times just because I really want a saturated color on that texture paste. There, okay, so you can see how much it darkened it up, and then if you really look there, you can see the shimmer of the Distress Spritz. So I was trying out again the brown versus the black, and I am going to end up going with the black. So I'm going to glue those down, and it takes to me quite a bit of glue to go to glue onto a texture paste. It just doesn't grab it easily. And I actually tuck some in behind what's already secured there. And then I'm going to put the black stamped page on top of it. My ink is getting almost empty, and so it's sometimes I have to really struggle with it. Or not my ink, my glue is getting almost empty. So it's finicky. So I'm going to add this stamp. I'm adding one of those butterflies, but this stamp, or not stamp, a sticker is going to go underneath it. And I start to glue it, and then I realize, oh, I never trimmed off the white edge, which I normally do. So instead of, see, I'm right there, like, oh no. So I just cut it off right through the glue. Now, often I don't have to glue those stickers because they are pretty sticky, but with all the texture paste and everything, I did want to make sure that I glued it down. And then I'm trimming off any excess. And that is the butterfly I'm going to use. Kind of has some blues and some blacks, and I'm not sure about the orange, and later I actually add some distress crayon just to kind of knock the orange down just a bit. And I only glue the body portion so the wings will come out a little bit, not be flat. The butterfly is from a digital download that I printed and fussy cut out. And this little tag that I'm sticking down there, I'm testing it out below. I do end up using the bluish tag there, and I also got that from a digital download. I like that it looks very distressed. And I just printed it on a color printer and on a lightweight cardstock so that it does have a little body. And then I thought there's just a couple spots that maybe needed a little something, so I grabbed a circle stamp, and this is from the Field Notes, Stampers Anonymous, and I'm just going to stamp some of the Versamark up top there and a little bit down where there is no texture paste. And I have this coppery looking embossing powder. And I'm just sprinkling it onto those areas. I'm really not looking for a real clean read on it. Cleaning it up a bit, but it's not going to be a focal point. It's just going to be kind of hidden there. So just to add a little more interest. So I'm embossing it with my heat tool there, and I'm going to add a little bit of ink around the edges of the tag with some scorched timber. And here I'm adding the Distress crayon. I think that's espresso. And I'm just trying to just knock down the orange a little bit of the butterfly, mainly in the center. And now I'm going to add a sentiment, and I'm going to use the Chit Chat, and I'm taking one word and it says creating, and I'm adding that to the blue tag down there. And the last thing I'm going to do is add some ribbon. So I'm taking my seam ribbon, taking two different lengths of it, and I'm going to use some scorched timber, and I think I used Uncharted Mariner because I really want that blue to stand out. So I put them on my mat, and yes, that's definitely Uncharted Mariner, and add some spritz of water and just kind of mop it up with my seam binding ribbon. And I'm just going to dry it there in that ball. I am grabbing, okay, there it is. I was going to say, I'm going to grab my dryer and just a second. So it doesn't take long to dry. It took longer than that, but it doesn't take long at all to dry. And so I line those up and I push them through the hole, remembering that, at least in my situation, I don't have the hole protector thing that goes around the holes and the tags. And so I just want to be really careful because this tag has been pretty wet with all the distress inks. So I'm just careful as I pull my ribbons so that it's kind of tight. And that's it. I got final pictures coming up. I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't subscribed, I invite you to. If you like what you saw, please give me a thumbs up. Either way, I hope you have an awesome day.